This is the primal scream of a dying regime.
Pray for our enemies, because we're going medieval on these people. You're just not got a free shot on all these networks lying about the people. The people have had a belly full of it. I know you don't like hearing that. I know you try to do everything in the world to stop that, but you're not going to stop it. It's going to happen.
And where do people like that go to share the big lie? MAGA media. I wish in my soul, I wish that any of these people had a conscience.
Ask yourself, what is my task and what is my purpose? If that answer is to save my country, this country will be saved.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
It's Saturday, 18 July, year of our Lord 2026. Terry Schilling. I got Michael Pack on deck. We're going to get to Michael in just a moment, the great filmmaker. Terry, before I let you go, we spent the first part of the show talking about $300 trillion of global debt, from sovereign debt all the way to, what you owe on your credit cards globally, and that we're heading towards a margin call, which is going to be catastrophic and lead us to a crisis. Here in the United States, we are, $40 trillion in debt. The first 9 months of this year, $1.4 trillion deficit spending. It'll go up to $2 trillion. We're in a war that, as much as I love Pete and these guys, they keep sending these bills to Capitol Hill for $88 billion, $100 billion. And, the Arabs aren't writing a check. President Trump proposed the other day a 20% spiff on everything coming out of the Persian Gulf, which, hey, ain't perfect. I'm for free navigation. But when you're in a jam, you're in a jam. And he gets some phone calls from the Saudis and UAE say, well, we can't afford that. And the next thing you know, that's off. One of the ways to turn this around, one of the basic building blocks is to get more stability is family formation. Right now, family formation, you say, is in the late 30s. First-time home buyers are in the 40s. That post-World War II and really throughout American history has been the backbone of the country. Family formation, particularly in your young 20s, has been a backbone of the American economy. And now it's getting later and later. And the reason it's getting later and later, let's face it, women are sitting there looking at guys. You have 12 million STEM workers. They're not in the labor force because you have all these foreign workers here on H-1B visas. Working class blacks and Hispanics, you've flooded the zone with, Bovino says 100 million illegal aliens. At least we know there's 20 million here from the Biden regime. That they look and the women are making a rational thing. Hey, can this guy, as much as I love him or as much as I think we have chemistry, can he step up to the plate and really provide economically to support a family with a couple of kids? This gets later and later and later. That's a big a ticking time bomb as hitting 100% of GDP to debt. On top of that, you have artificial intelligence. And I say, as bad as our finances are in the country and the balance sheet, we are making virtually a suicidal economic bet, a highly leveraged bet on artificial intelligence to deliver massive productivity increases without the concomitant mass layoffs. The probability of that happening is remote. And now you're having people in tech say, well, maybe Bannon's not wrong on this. I don't see the returns. You add artificial intelligence, the investment on that, on the pressure on the American family, and particularly young unmarrieds, to actually make not just a family decision, but at its heart also an economic decision. You're going to push that out later. That's how you have societal collapse, sir.
That's exactly right, Steve. And, we can go back to previous societies and civilizations. The Romans became too prosperous. They stopped having children. They had to import slave labor to do all their crops and to plow their fields. And guess what happened? They died out. They were erased. What's it going to be like when we make robots to replace us? When we make robots to do all of our jobs, when we take away purpose and meaning from people? And Steve, if you look at the DEI, everyone focuses on DEI as, a cultural phenomenon. It's an economic policy, right? They're blocking out young men out of the entry-level jobs, out of college degrees, and out of medical schools, out of law schools, because of the color of their skin. And so now you have a whole situation where a bunch of young white men who are very capable, very smart, they scored higher, they don't have any jobs, they don't have any prospects. And guess what? They're giving up. They're going to drugs. They're going to porn. They're going to video games. They're distracted. It's not even just like the hard drugs. It's like weed now is everywhere. You smell it in all your major cities. I was in St. Louis yesterday. I smelled weed everywhere. Why is this everywhere? It was not just 10 years ago where you wouldn't smell weed everywhere. But young men are withdrawing from society, and that's going to have a reverberating effect on young women as well. And so the more we go without getting young people married again, where there's an economy that doesn't make sense for young people to get married, the more miserable we're all going to be. The more we're going to be in therapy, the more we're going to be on antipsychotic medication, the more our economy is going to actually be cheap. Steve, the economy's fake. You used to be able to support a family off of one income. You'd have a vacation home. You have a second car. You'd have anything you wanted. And now 2 incomes doesn't do that. 2 lawyers don't do that. A plumber doesn't do that anymore. It's atrocious, and we need to get serious about fixing our economy and reorienting it towards the family and towards the trades, frankly. I think we've sent way too many kids to college. Steve, I don't ever use my college degree. I could have read all these books myself. We paid all this money for it, and it's worthless. And you'll find that actually, if you sit down with the American, we're doing focus groups right now in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina. And what keeps coming up is everyone says their college degree was a scam. They don't use it. It was way too much money, and it's completely unnecessary.
Someone who didn't go to college, Charlie Kirk, turned out pretty successful. Terry, where do they go and get more information about this? Because it is a fight that we need people informed on. You need to get your arms around what it means to be, and I'll get you back. We're kind of out of time between the natalist and the pro-family, which is profound, but I'll hopefully get you back this week to talk about that. Where do people go to get all this information? Where do they start getting smart about the family as the core building block, the American family as the core building block to the country itself, and particularly the economy? Sir.
Well, just go to AmericanPrinciplesProject.org, sign up to get all of our news and email updates, and check me out on Twitter or on X. It's on all social media. It's just Schilling, SCHILLING 1776, Schilling 1776. We're going to have a new report coming out, Steve, in the coming weeks about how we reform and rejigger the economy to be about reviving the American family. I'm very excited to share it with everyone.
Wow, that's coming out late July, early August? Is that when we can expect
give me a little bit of time. It'll be coming out in the coming weeks.
This is Terry and his homework assignment. Terry Schilling, you're fighting the good fight, sir. Thank you for coming on today. Appreciate you. Look forward to the report.
Thanks, brother.
American Principles. By the way, the guy that really went all in early on in transgender was amazing. Michael Pack joins me. Michael, I want to get to the films you're doing, and particularly this one I want people to see, get a taste of it and where they can go to see all of it. But I got to ask you, and this is because of the confirmation hearings this week, the president and his powers to pick. So we have 4,000 people that any administration, whether it's Obama or Biden or the president, get 4,000. 3,000 of those, you basically get a security clearance or some sort of rudimentary security clearance. You can show up for work on the afternoon of 20 January of any, the first day of the administration, you can show up. 1,000, and these are the more senior members of the government and the people that really have massive decision-making responsibility, have to get confirmed by the United States Senate, and that is in the Constitution. They wanted to make sure that the legislative branch had some check over the president for just putting in whoever he wanted at any time he wanted. And so I've always called the Senate is really the human resources department of the government. Now, what used to be a process of advice and consent, because that's what it's supposed to be, has turned into a partisan warfare. You were the most celebrated, I would say, as being a conservative filmmaker at the time of the conservative filmmakers. You were kind of the guy that made the films that could play on PBS or go into theaters, right? Just on your skill set and not be tends towards more, I don't know, of a propagandist, as yours truly, Stephen K. Bannon was. Now, you were nominated to run the most important element of kind of the global communications for the United States government, a revered position. And we controlled the Senate at the time. Mitch McConnell, I want you to talk to people. How long after you were nominated by the president, did you kind of sit in limbo so that the left-wing media could destroy you, your professional life, and your family, sir?
Well, as you know, the president asked me to serve in March after he was elected. 2 months after he was sworn in. And it took 3 years and 3 months before I actually walked through the door of the U.S. Agency for Global Media. And I served for only 8 months to the end of that term. They succeeded in blocking me. My main opponent was Senator Menendez, and he was very skillful at that. He had an army of lawyers. They were great at blocking. And even before it got to the Senate, was blocked by administrative efforts inside sort of places like the Office of Government Ethics that would just endlessly require more forms, more this, more that. They were just great at blocking it. It was a combination of being blocked politically in the Senate and then being blocked by internal kind of swamp forces inside the government. And they were all marshaled together. And it did not stop, as you just pointed out, after I did walk through the door and was confirmed by the Senate. My agency and I personally were sued endlessly in the District of Columbia, a great place for Democrats to sue Republicans. And it went on even beyond the end of the Trump administration into the Biden administration, because as you often point out, they are relentless. A kind of victory is not enough. They really want to, burn their enemies to the ground.
They want to. Listen, now, you were nominated in March of 2017, right?
Yes.
You actually walked through the door. Was it in March or April of 2020, sir? When did you actually go through the door?
I think it was May or June of 2020. So 3 years and 3 months later. By the time I was serving, they were already into the next presidential campaign. And I tried very hard to get the Voice of America and the other agencies under the USAGM banner to at least portray that presidential campaign fairly. And that was a battle. And not a battle I think I won, but I tried.
But talk to me about that. First off, we're going to go to break here in a second. Why did they throw down so hard on you? They did for a lot of people who just quit, but why did they single you out to say, we have to go to general quarters to keep this guy from getting his hands on Voice of America and the rest of, Radio Free Europe, Radio Asia, all of it? Why did they say Michael Pact is a guy that we have to burn it down before he let him take over? Why was that?
Well, before I came there, this was like a really sleepy agency. It spun off from the USIA in the Clinton administration, and it had really been run essentially by Democrats through the intervening, 20 plus years. And, I assured my wife and family that my own nomination and service would be uncontroversial. And like many of my opinions, that turned out to be wrong. I think what it comes down to, Steve, is not me personally. But I think that they recognize that this is a huge media enterprise. On one hand, you could say it's just a mid-level government agency, but it was at the time had a budget of almost $1 billion a year. There were 4,000 people in the agency, mostly journalists. It was one of the biggest media enterprises in the world, if you combine the 5 broadcasters: Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, Radio Free Asia, Middle East Broadcasting, and Cuba Broadcasting. And the left sees the media as something that they have to control. And this was something they wanted to control, both for its own, just to control the messages that went out to hundreds of millions of people all over the world, but also to put their own journalists in and, put them in, bring them out. It's a place to house journalists and credential journalists, and they controlled it and they did not want to give it up. My only goal was to bring it back to its actual legal mission, which is to be fair and balanced, to present a fair picture of America, and to sort of support Americans' foreign policy goals and represent them along with criticism all over the world. And I simply wanted the thing to be covered equally. But as I often say, if you control 100% of the message and someone says you're going down to 50%, you see that as a 50% loss. And that's how they read it.
Michael, hang on. Michael Pack is with us. He's got a brilliant new film out we're going to discuss, but we're also going to continue on about this confirmation process. Michael Pack could have walked in the door if we'd had a technical recess in the first term. He would be what's called a recess appointee. Short commercial break. Take your phone out, text Bannon at 989898. Get the ultimate guide for investing in gold and precious metals in the age of Trump, and you get to meet Philip Patrick and his team. Do it today.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Michael Pack, you stuck at, why did you stick for 3 years and 3 months? And people don't know this, but every day in the paper would be another just salacious attack on you, leaked by the deep state to the Washington Post, et cetera. They just had a series of what an awful person Michael Pack is, what a partisan hack he is. I'd sit there and read it and said, man, these are the most bald-faced lies. But you were a saint. You hung in there. Why did you hang in for so long?
Yeah, the attacks were amazing, especially at NPR, David Folkenflik, and the Washington Post. The Washington Post had 40 pieces about me in my 8 months there, including 4 op-eds and 4 editorials. You know, the day I left office, the editorials were about Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump, and me. I told my wife, well, we're the 3 most powerful people in the world. But since you know my wife, Gina, she didn't believe that. But it looked that way. Why did I hang in? I mean, I was producing my documentary on Clarence Thomas while this process went on, so I was busy. But look, Steve, when you're attacked, either you capitulate or fight back. Those are the only 2 choices. And I did not want to capitulate. I mean, it didn't seem right. I mean, the president trusted me. I didn't, either you back down in humiliation or you don't. And it's true that I lost a lot of friends during that process, but I gained a lot of friends too. I mean, you yourself said that you didn't think I had it in me, and neither did I, actually. So some people got renewed respect for me. Perhaps you too. I don't know. You had a lot of respect before. So I don't know. That's what happens when you're attacked. Either you fight back or you quit. Those are the 2 choices.
What lessons did you take away from that? What lessons personally did you take away? Because you were in your, late 40s, early 50s when this happened. Most people, there's not many life lessons you can teach after that. What did you learn about that process?
To me, I mean, there are things that I knew. I mean, we've talked about this before. I knew about the administrative state, the swamp, and I had been in government briefly in the George H.W. Bush administration. But the nature of the attacks, it's maybe obvious, but you feel it differently when there are attacks on you and your organization. This sort of complete, the hatred of Donald Trump throughout my agency and the willingness to do anything to stop him, even though he was president of the United States, and sign their paychecks, were astounding. And I think for me, I was just his minion there at USAGM. I don't think it was personal to me. And their willingness to do anything was astounding. I mean, you talk about the media coverage. I mean, the media, when I was growing up, used to be what I call biased, where they present both sides and they would more favorably present the sides they agreed with. But by this time, it's well beyond bias. Only one side is presented. In those 40 pieces, they never interviewed anybody who agreed with me or anybody who could explain what I was doing about visas, about the firewall, about editorial independence, about anything. They interviewed only one side, and they were willing to lie. I had a comms director who would try to correct their lies all the time. After a month or 2, he had to be transferred somewhere else. He couldn't take it. He'd present the facts, and they would print something else. And I think maybe your listeners know this about the media and the deep state, but it's a different kind of knowledge when you're in the trenches. And it's that kind of knowledge that I think I picked up. Hard-won knowledge.
Hard-won knowledge. You have the situation that if you went, if the Senate, which is, President Trump's now a year and a half into his second term. So it's been 5.5 years, and the Senate has never been on a day of recess. Why the Republicans are in charge, and they've been in charge during President Trump's time. Why is that? Why does the Senate not take an official recess, and then President Trump could get in some recess appointments? You would have been a very logical choice in the first year. And there's some limitations on recess appointments. They only go for so long, or I guess they haven't been court challenged about that. But why is the Senate decided, and there's been no other president this has happened to, why has the Senate, controlled by Republicans, made a decision that Donald Trump is not worthy of taking a recess and letting him think through, maybe you should have a couple of 3 recess appointments, and maybe that's even a guy like Michael Pact. I don't know, maybe 2 years into the process so that you have 2 years left. Why is that, sir?
It's unfathomable to me. I mean, in my own case, I was up against the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and Senator Menendez was the ranking member, and he determined the course of my confirmation process as a ranking member. I don't know how he did it.
I just want to make sure the audience understands this. He did not head the committee. The committee was headed by Republicans. He's the ranking member, but they turned over because obviously Mitch McConnell did not want you in there. They determined, let Menendez do the dirty work here. And he was more than glad to do the dirty work because the Democrats hated you to your core being because you were Trump's minion, right? But that's my point. Sure. Why would they let the committee we control? Because this audience has rang enough doorbells and given enough $10 contributions to make sure they're in power. Why would they turn that power over to the Democrats?
Well, part of it, a partial explanation in this case is that Menendez really wanted to block me, and he was willing to trade things to the majority to do that. I mean, they were willing to, he's willing to say, well, I'll confirm all your these ambassadors, and ambassadors don't make much difference, period. I mean, the president can call foreign leaders. He doesn't need ambassadors to sort of go into their presence. And Senator Menendez and the Democrats saw this as important and willing to trade off their chits to stop me because they saw the control of the media as important, and Republicans did not. Beyond that, I don't know. I mean, the workings of the Senate and of Congress in general are an eternal mystery to me. I mean, one of the things that struck me in my 8 months there is how many Republican members are controlled by their staff. And a lot of their staffs are weak, whereas the Democrats had way better staffs and way more experienced staffs, and they operated more as a machine. I mean, you know that very well, Steve, and I think there are historic reasons for that, but it's not a good thing for Republicans.
Let's pivot now to you've been making films. You're making films and playing over the Wall Street Journal. We're going to play this after the break. But talk to me about your overall filmmaking with the Journal and what this film, particularly why this struck your interest, because I've always said PACT has a great nose for what is important and kind of what's downrange. What are the films you're making over there, and why did you choose this subject?
Well, as you know, we make both long-form documentaries, and now we are doing these short documentaries with the Wall Street Journal. And we have an incubator program to train the next generation of sort of right-of-center, or at least fair-minded documentary filmmakers. But the project with the Wall Street Journal is a series of short films, 30-minute films, that look at issues and events from the recent past that have been misreported, underreported, or memory holed. And the first, and they're free, not behind the Wall Street Journal paywall. They're all at wsj.com/opinion docs, or you can just search, or you can go to palladiumpictures.com, my company, and find them. And this one is about the lockdowns. And now, I think the lockdowns were one of the biggest things to happen to America and even the world in the last 5 or 10 years. And it shapes a lot of our government, our public policy, the way we live today. But people largely want to move on. They don't really want to think about it. And we wanted to tell the story and remind people of what happened and why, so that it doesn't happen again. Now, your viewers, they're sort of war room posse, they may have heard these ideas, but I think what we try to do with the Wall Street Journal is put these back in a story, tell people what happened over time. And I think even those that are loyal viewers of yours might not remember how it all played out. And that's what we intend to do. And we're happy to be on the Wall Street Journal website and hope to reach an audience that's more middle of the road. We'll never be able to get the people who loved Dr. Fauci to change their mind. But some people in the middle that haven't heard it before, we really want to reach them and tell them what happened. And it's our goal not to sort of dig deep and find sort of conspiracy theories or things people have heard before. But I think the bare facts of what happened are compelling enough. And we suppressed science during that period. We as a country gave up our basic rights to the government. And we should never do that again. And I think things like the declining work ethic in America comes from this COVID period, and even a lot of people's trust in government, that the government will solve all their problems. This rise of socialism comes from the habits formed during COVID. And I think it's important to tell the story, and the Wall Street Journal opinion people agreed.
Were you pretty shocked? We're going to go to commercial break. Were you pretty shocked about our audience obviously was immersed in this, but I'm always shocked at people that have almost just the very basic rudimentary understanding of the pandemic and then the results of things about the pandemic. And you're right. They've put it down the memory hole. They just don't want to deal with it. And I'm pretty stunned that it was such a pivotal moment in American history that people just don't want to deal with it.
Absolutely. It's a stunning thing. And yeah, I think lots of people don't know. I mean, I live in Chevy Chase, as you know, since you have been to my home, a very blue area outside of Washington, D.C. We had a lot of thank you, Dr. Fauci signs on the lawns around us during COVID. And most of my neighbors still think he's a hero and saved millions of lives instead of the opposite. So I think it's really worth telling. And even I was sort of shocked when you put it all together. I think you're going to show the trailer. Even the trailer reminds you of what it was like back then.
Why don't you hang on? We're going to play a trailer and I think a clip or two from it. Michael Pack is with us. Mike Lindell's about to join us. Tage Gill, all of it. Short commercial break. Back in the room in a moment.
Dr. Fauci said, that's the problem. The people are not afraid enough. I said, it's unethical to use fear in an emergency to manipulate people.
We wrote this declaration with the hope of telling the world that the lockdown was the wrong strategy.
Collins saying, Jay Bhattacharya, we got to take them down. What scientists talk like that?
They're killing people.
High government officials, including inside the White House itself, would go to social media companies and threaten them.
Nice social media platform you got there. Shame if something happened to it.
We became more totalitarian.
If you don't have free speech, you cannot have science. Almost from the beginning of the Biden administration, they weaponized government, aiming to control the speech around the treatment for COVID, the effectiveness of lockdowns, the harms of lockdowns, school closures, masks, you name it. High government officials, including inside the White House itself, would go to social media companies and threaten them, telling the social media companies who and what to censor.
When Fauci talked, he started his talk by telling the American public he's the lead public health person in the United States. And I had just spoken, and I was a CDC director, and I went to him afterwards. I said, Tony, I mean, what's that all about? I mean, you run a lab at NIH, you know, but he clearly felt upon him that he had to take that position.
Dr. Fauci at one point leaned over this sort of oval conference table and said, one of the problems is the public is not afraid enough. And I was shocked to hear something like this. And I interrupted. I said, can you repeat that? Dr. Fauci said, that's the problem. The people are not afraid enough, so they won't listen. I think it's sort of obvious, but I said, you know, that's unethical. That's not the way public health is supposed to be done. It's unethical, in my opinion, to use fear in an emergency to manipulate people.
The government working to suppress scientific theories strikes me as a pretty serious breach.
Yeah, I think it was really wrong. I'm not sure, you know, whether I'm going to say it was the government or scientists in the government. But I do know that Collins and Fauci were trying to suppress it. I do know the scientific community was trying to suppress it. I knew the scientific journals were trying to suppress it. I knew the scientific media was trying to suppress it. And ultimately, you got social media to suppress it, but because they were pressured to do that by, I would argue, the government scientists.
Okay, so Pac, this is what this is going to do. And I realize for the Wall Street Journal, and I'm so proud of the fact that the Warren Posse is 10 times farther ahead than the traditional Wall Street Journal. And I tell this to all my young nephews that think the Wall Street Journal is the gospel truth. The question of this audience is going to be, yes, we know this. Of course, seeing it again, it's like having a flashback. Why, given your reporting, why is Tony Fauci a free man? Why is he walking around doing what he does and not in a federal prison somewhere, sir?
Well, first of all, I have to defend my partners, the Wall Street Journal opinion section, on this very topic. They were way ahead. They had published Jay Bhattacharya and Scott Atlas in March. Right, the pandemic came in December.
No. They in fact, and to give the devil's due, they actually did the Barrington decree, or the Barrington, the thing that kicked it off was actually in the pages. Barrington Declaration was actually the opinion section of the Wall Street Journal. They were ahead of the curve on this. There's no doubt.
Okay. I don't know about Dr. Fauci. I mean, lots of people still love him. I think that, in our bubble, you can think everybody knows that he, supported gain of function research. But even so, I mean, the stuff that Scott Atlas and Jay Bhattacharya talk about in our film are stuff that was on the surface even then. He ignored data and he stuck with restrictive lockdowns that had horrible consequences. I mean, millions and millions of dollars and people's lives, children who lost years of schooling needlessly, and businesses that were shuttered, never to reopen, people who just lost track of their lives or couldn't see their loved ones. I mean, horrible consequences. And that's to Fauci and Birx. I mean, I think people are trying to hold them to account. I mean, I think Rand Paul is relentless, to his credit. And as you know, there were all these emails released at the end. Very recently. So
Tulsi Gabbard at the end of her next to last day released all this. Let me ask you, I got to ask you, you live in that neighborhood of yours where some of your filmmaking takes place, is one of the most pleasant neighborhoods. You kind of almost like it's a Norman Rockwell, painting of what an American, let's say upper middle class or middle class neighborhood should be. And it seemed people are very friendly. If you took this film and said, hey, I want you to come over to the PAX and we're going to have, we're going to have a picnic out back and we're going to serve refreshment, and I'm going to put it up on the big screen with your name, people you've lived there for decades and are considered friends and neighbors, all that. And you showed that. First off, what percentage of your neighbors would sit through the film before they left and discuss? And at the end, would they be shocked that you had come up with this propaganda against Dr. Fauci?
I think what would happen in my neighborhood, and I think this will happen to viewers who go to the WSJ.com website and look for Lockdown Dissonance, I think a whole bunch of my neighbors will walk out. But I think there are some that are just apolitical, that are teachers or therapists. There are a lot of those in the neighborhood. I think that they might actually have their minds changed. Whereas the ones that are already very political, we have a lot of people in the neighborhood that work at the World Bank, for instance, and the IMF, and all those people, they made up their minds and they will walk out. But I think some people would be convinced. The film, I think you're planning maybe to show the whole film at some point. I think you see the whole film. It's very hard to argue that something really went wrong there. And I think for most people that aren't already hugely biased, it is actually a compelling story. I mean, just the bare facts of it. And as you know, that's the way we do our filmmaking. You made this point earlier that we shy away from propaganda and we try to let all sides speak and we let the facts speak for themselves. And the facts are really pretty clear here. So I like to think maybe half my neighbors would walk out and half my neighbors might have their eyes opened a little bit. But I don't know. I'm not sure my wife is willing to do that test case, Steve, but that's my prediction.
No. I would strongly recommend against. Can you give us a hint of anything else you're working on? And if we go to the site, what other films that can people see that you've done for the Journal?
Well, if they go to WSJ.com/opinion docs, the two earlier ones are there. One of them is about the worst anti-Semitic riot in American history at Crown Heights in 1991. And it's really a study of the origins of sort of left-wing, democratic-oriented anti-Semitism, which is so prevalent today. And the other one is called The Prime Minister versus the Blob, and it's about Liz Truss's prime ministership and her efforts to fight their version of the administrative state, which they more colorfully call the Blob, a very good name, I think. Yeah, there it is up there. And we are now working on one that'll come out at the end of August on the withdrawal from Afghanistan, which I think will be, it'll be the 5th anniversary. And I think it'll really tell a story that people maybe haven't quite heard. So those are the ones that get there. And if they go to palladiumpictures.com, they can find a gateway to the 15 other documentaries we've done that have, most of which have been nationally broadcast on PBS, including the 2 I worked on with you, Rickover, Birth of Nuclear Power, and The Last 600 Meters, The Battles of Najaf and Fallujah.
We have to show Rick. We have to have an event like we had for Last 600 Meters and show Rick over. That film is so amazing, and it has not been shown enough. I'll talk to you afterwards. I want to say before I leave, one of the greatest compliments I've ever had. I'm at Michael's, and he's got editing. He and Gina run this great company, and he's a great mentor. And I'm working on one of my films. I even forget what it is, but I asked you to see a very early copy of it. And we're sitting there, and it's this dark little editing thing. We're watching this little TV, and Michael goes, "That's very artistic the way you did that." And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "No, you actually are an artist." I sat there and go, "You got to stop. You can't really be." He says, "No, you're actually an artist." I don't know if you remember that, but that was one of the greatest compliments I've ever had. I walked down and go, God, I said Michael Pact, who's our best filmmaker, actually said that. So that motivated me. That's got my kept my filmmaking going. Michael, one more time, where do they go? Where they go to see all of your work, and particularly this Afghanistan? We'll talk about that. We got to make a big deal about that for the 5th anniversary.
Well, they can go to palladiumpictures.com, Palladium pictures.com, and find our past work. Or they can go to either the Wall Street Journal website, WSJ.com, or their YouTube page and search for Lockdown Dissidents, or, as you put up a minute ago, the main page for our Wall Street Journal website, Wall Street Journal documentaries, WSJ.com/opinion docs. And let me stress that they're all free, because many people are irritated by the Wall Street Journal's paywall, but these are not paywalled. Maybe eventually they will be, but for now they're free, and they're each about 30 minutes. And I think they tell a compelling and exciting story as well as an important one.
Michael Pact, thank you, sir. Thank you for being the toughest and longest holdout for President Trump's first term. Michael Pact did not capitulate. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Steve. Great talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you, brother. Tage Gill. Tage, you're someone that shifted late in life from being someone that was defended the country and was a gunman and put yourself in harm's way for decades to become an artist. Your canvas is coffee, and you came to the conclusion one day, I've had the best equipment in the world, the best weapons in the world, the best training in the world, and I drink the crappiest coffee. I'm going to change that, and I'm going to create my own. It took you years to do it, but Warpath Coffee is the world's finest coffee. Don't take it from me. There's over 19,000 5-star reviews on your site right now that people can go say, it ain't Tage and it ain't Bannon promoting this. These are folks. Tell me about it, sir.
Yeah, the website is warpath.coffee. And if you haven't tried it, try it. Like you said, Steve, I wanted to create a really high product. When I was in the SEAL teams, we always had the best gear, the best equipment, the best guns, and I wanted to have the best coffee. So the first one we created was the breakfast blend. It's a medium roast, and it's really, really smooth. And then when we started working with you, you said we had a dark roast, so I created that Mariners blend. And I called it Mariners blend because you're in the Navy, I was in the Navy, so we're Mariners. And that one, even though it's dark roast, we don't burn the beans at all. So you can drink it straight black. It's got very low acid content. It's not bitter at all. So that was the goal, is to create coffee that you could drink straight black. And that's what we've done. We have K-Cups, we have espresso. The espresso, you can actually drink straight black. The espresso is amazing. People love it. And then we have all the flavored coffees, and the holiday blend. People were emailing us year round, so we just put it up year round now. And we have decaf. The decaf is, I didn't realize there's so many people that drink decaf. The decaf sells out fast. And if you haven't tried it, try it. Read the reviews. There's 19,000 plus 5-star reviews. People absolutely love this coffee. And it's incredible. This weekend, we're doing 20% off with promo code War Room. So warpath.coffee, promo code War Room, and 20% off. So warpath.coffee, promo code War Room, 20% off for the weekend.
Hang on for 1 second. I'm going to get Mike Lindell, but I need a minute with you on the other side, and that is going to be about Afghanistan. You were very involved in the Benghazi, at least promoting the Benghazi situation. Get the truth of that. I want to talk about Afghanistan, the 5th anniversary coming up on Michael Pack's making a film. Birchgold.com. Find out why we call it the dollar empire. Why we call it dollar empire. Why is that big? This concept of Bretton Woods. If you can answer what Bretton Woods was and why it's important, and when I say important in your daily personal life, you'll go a long way to having your own personal financial stability. Birchgold.com/Bannon. The end of the dollar empire. It's totally free. Go there today.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Tej Gill, Benghazi. Tell me about Benghazi. You were my head of my security, but you started something on Benghazi and then get shut down. Why was Benghazi personal to you?
One of my friends, Ty Woods, he was a teammate and a great friend. He was one of the guys I looked up to. I knew him day one in the SEAL teams. He was there. He was killed. And then Glenn Doherty, he was actually, Glenn and I, we both worked at the agency, and him and I were roommates in Afghanistan. I knew him from the West Coast SEAL teams. So it hit harder when both these guys were killed. And when Hillary, she turned down, like, I think it was, I can't remember, it was over 600 requests for security upgrades for the consulate in Benghazi, Libya. And I think if a lot of those requests were filled, that attack wouldn't have happened. It couldn't have happened. The gates were unlocked. There's no cameras, but it was crazy the way it went down. And all the other agencies and groups like Red Cross and stuff had left Benghazi because the threat was so high. So I created T-shirts. They were Hillary Clinton, Kill My Friends. Let me grab one. Sorry. This T-shirt, this is a skateboard deck, but we did these Hillary Clinton, Kill My Friends because I wanted to raise awareness about what happened in Benghazi. It was negligence why that happened, and I still believe that a rescue team could have gotten there in time. But regardless of that, the attack never should have happened in Benghazi. So yeah, my two teammates, Navy SEALs, Ty Woods and Glenn Doherty, they were there. They were killed that in the morning after from a mortar attack, and I don't think it should have happened. That consulate should have been hardened, and that they should have been able to repel that attack. The terrorists shouldn't have been able to just push the gate open and walk in the compound.
Trey Gowdy, I think when he botched the Benghazi hearing, which was a complete debacle, I think they actually allowed that Hillary Clinton wanted to take the oath, not on camera, but in a private room beforehand. He agreed to the whole thing was a debacle. Were Ty Wood and Glenn Doherty, were they good men?
Oh yeah, they're both incredible guys. Ty was a family man. His wife Dorothy, and he's got kids, and I knew them all when we were in the SEAL teams way back in the day. And then he was doing contracting. He was working at the agency. He was a top-notch, like stellar operator, stellar guy, stellar father. And then Glenn was one of those guys who he just take the shirt off his back and give it to you. He was such a good dude. He was such a nice guy. He was just a great guy all around. And they were both there. They both fought all night long. They were at the CIA consulate. They went to the State Department. They're at the CIA outstation, we call them, and they went to the CIA consulate. They rescued 28 State Department Americans. I think with the guy Sean Smith, he was a communication guy. He was killed, and then the ambassador Stevens, he was killed. They weren't able to rescue them, but they rescued 28 Americans that night, and then the next morning they were killed in the early hours of the morning from a mortar attack. So they were both amazing people.
And we never got justice for those individuals, correct?
Nope.
Zuckerberg, when you start selling these shirts and they blowing out, Zuckerberg shut you down, correct?
Yes, we sold the shirts for a few years, and then in 2020, through that account, it was actually called Project Warpath. And the Project Warpath account, I posted something about the 2020 election being stolen. I posted a picture of the voter fraud graph from Wisconsin, and then they indefinitely suspended all our advertising accounts, and they shadow banned the accounts on Facebook and Instagram to the point where you couldn't find them anymore. And then Google would constantly say our account needs to be verified, so we couldn't run Google ads because we used to run almost $100,000 a month in Google and Facebook ads, and it was profitable. And then they shut it down overnight when we posted the voter fraud graph from Wisconsin.
Voter fraud. Brother, we're getting that later. I'm also going to get you back on about Afghanistan. We got a bolt now. One more time, where do people go to get the greatest coffee ever made?
Warpath.coffee. Use promo code WARROOM, 20% off this weekend. Warpath.coffee, promo code WARROOM.
And you're not hearing that from Tej Gill and Stephen K. Bannon. You're hearing that from your compadres. 19,000 of them. Make sure you go and give a review, whatever it is. If it's a 1-star, give us a 1-star. If it's a 5-star, give us a 5-star. Tej Gill, honored to have you on here, brother.
Thank you, Steve.
Benghazi. People forget that, right? Mike Lindell, tell me about the greatest sale in the history of the universe, in the history of My Pillow, sir.
250 years. 250 years. This happens once every 250 years, this great USA sale. But we put together a special package for the War Room boss, you guys. And that is our 4-pack My Pillows for $49.98. 2 premium My Pillows, 2 Go Anywhere My Pillows. Get this packet, you guys. Use that promo code War Room. And then we also have our Mega 2 sale. This is every 250 years, all these sales are colliding. The Mega 2 sale, you guys got the premium My Pillows, the Giza Dream Sheets, our president's favorite product, that as low as $29.98. You have our mattresses still on sale for 50% off. Use that promo code War Room. Go to mypillow.com/War Room. And you guys, if you check it out, all the sales right there in one spot for you guys, and use that promo code War Room or call 800-873-1062. Call now. Free shipping options are available right now. And get those mattresses. You guys are hitting them pretty hard. 50% off. Made in the USA. Get the best sleep ever.
Mike Lindell, one more time. Where do we go right now to get this? Where do they go, sir?
You guys go to mypillow.com/War Room. And you guys take advantage of that 4-pack. This is a War Room special. 4 My Pillows for $49.98. And you guys cannot beat that. And then once you get to the website, you're going to see the Giza Dream Sheets as low as $29.98. Our 6-piece My Towel sets, best towels ever, $39.98. Promo code War Room. Free shipping options available right now.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Look forward to seeing you on Monday. I want to thank our sponsor for the Saturday show, Birch Gold. Time to talk to Philip Patrick team. Also time to think. You got some time over the weekend. Maybe it's time to delve into End of the Dollar Empire and share it with somebody. You'll start to understand your world a lot better, particularly the highly leveraged bet we're making as a nation, the highly leveraged bet on artificial intelligence and productivity increases that don't have concomitant mass layoffs. I'm taking the under, let's say, not buying it. See you over the weekend on Getter and back here Monday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time.